So I come from a
Hmm.
really small town in India. I mean, Darjeeling, it's a small city, the back of beyond. Growing up, the world wasn't a level playing field for me because I barely had information. There wasn't anybody like me on screen because it is
Hmm.
sometimes we feel like, oh my God, like I'm here in Canada. And now if I go back, like what's the entire town, village, country, what are they going to think of me?
There has been so much demand for another video, and I know that we have sort of exchanged messages, and we know that last time when we had this discussion on you coming in alone to Canada, people really resonated with your story, and I'm sure that you got a really good response on your Instagram and other handles as well. A lot has changed from then to now. uh, and today I thought we'll just discuss about what's changed in your life, how has pandemic, affected you, and you seem to have started a side hustle, which has now become a full-time thing. So we'll talk all about that from your perspective, and maybe people get motivated to do what you have done. Because oftentimes what happens is because I'm the only one who is sharing my story, people think that maybe Navjot has something that we don't know. So today the effort is to have you in the loop and learn about your learnings and your motivations and what made you move into the new path that you have taken. So thank you so much, Srijana, for joining. Just for people who are new to the channel, if you can just introduce yourself, and then we just go from there.
Yes, thank you so much, Navjot, for having me back. I've been looking for this opportunity as well. The first time around when I appeared on the show, I did not know that I would get, so many just positive responses and people reaching out for support and guidance and, just nuggets of wisdom on life in Canada. And when I shared my story initially, I thought, well, it's just a story, in a
Yeah.
universe of a gazillion stories, and that it's not super important, or it might even possibly be boring. But the fact that so many people derive so much value from it, and
Hmm.
that people reached out to me and said, hey, I'm coming alone too, and your story motivated me. As cliche as it sounds, I think it's wonderful when your story is inspiring other people. And so for giving me the platform and for inviting me on the show the first time around, and now thank you so much. My name is Srijana, and I am in Toronto, in Canada. I moved from India, so I was born and raised in Darjeeling. Darjeeling tea, I guess. A lot of people identify Darjeeling with tea and the Himalayan railways and all of it. But I was born and raised in Darjeeling. I worked in a few different cities in India, Bangalore and Mumbai being the prominent ones. I had a really
Hmm.
long stint with the New Zealand High Commission, so the government of New Zealand,
Hmm.
before I moved. And I was in New Zealand as well. So that's been sort of my journey. It was a long, sort of meandering pathway to Canada. And when I got here, I'm a product of the express entry system. So basically, no job offer, no employer, no
Hmm.
Canadian education, hadn't even visited. So it was starting from scratch. And learning sort of the ropes of the industry. So because my area was immigration, I did
Hmm.
immigration policy analysis and also handled a large team of visa officers back in India. So because that was my area, the moment I came here, my endeavor was how can I build my knowledge base. So
Hmm.
going back to school, studying immigration, getting a license to practice, working for a law firm to understand the ground realities. So as a person, here alone, it is quite daunting and challenging. But of course, it's a matter of shedding inhibitions. I'm sure we'll
Oh,
delve into that
absolutely.
further.
Absolutely. And Srijana, I'm sure that a lot of viewers want to understand about immigration and whether the FSW draws are happening. We both know that we don't know that. So we are not
Yeah,
going to talk about immigration today, and the topic is a little bit different. And
sure.
for people who want to talk about immigration, with Srijana, there will be a few links that you can just go and talk to Srijana about. But today we are talking about your journey of going towards entrepreneurship. So tell me, Srijana, how so you were working, right? And you had a good job, when you came
Yeah.
here, everything was good. So what changed? Did the pandemic have any impact on your decision of going on your own into the business? And walk us through that journey.
So for me, my sort of entrepreneurial journey was not something that I volunteered to do
Hmm.
or that I willfully got into. My circumstances were a product of the pandemic. So I was working for a New Zealand-based company, and I was helping them set up their Canadian operations. So this was a big sort of migration-based company. They had established operations in a number of countries around the world, and they realized that Canada was an immigration hotspot, of course. And so they wanted me to start, a viable Canadian operations. So in terms of the skill sets that I had, in terms of, the fact that I had a license to practice, it did seem like sort of the perfect opportunity for me.
Mm.
And also to build an entire operations and then, mirror that process if I wanted to do it on my own. So
Mm.
that's what I was doing. But because they were a New Zealand-based company primarily, and New Zealand had come to a complete standstill, during the pandemic, basically all of their revenue sources did dry up. And I was told over a period of a number of calls that they did not basically have the money to sustain the Canadian operations, and that they would have to, at least for the moment, stop all of their, aims and whatever they were aspiring to do in Canada. So then for me, it was a matter of, either looking for another job or starting off, on my own. So for me, I did have a period of adjusting to the fact that there is no job, there is no, income coming in every month,
So how much
and then you
time,
think about
how
my
much time
options.
was that? Like how much time did it take for you to make that transition?
A good question, Navjot. A lot of people can say it was sudden because I thought I was, going to continue to have that job.
Okay.
But in a way, I also saw that coming because, we were
Uh,
on reduced salaries, people were being let go here and there. So I did know that we were on sort of murky waters, so to speak,
mm,
and that things weren't business as usual, and that there were decisions that were being made.
right.
A lot of very expensive sort of management positions were kind of
Mm,
being sort of expunged from the whole structure of the organization.
right.
So while in a way it was sudden, because like most people, you think it's not going to happen to you. You
Right.
think that in a lot of ways that you are too important, or that you hold a position of enough influence.
Mm,
But to me, the lesson in all of this was that nobody is really irreplaceable, and
yeah.
that when organizations, when it comes to viability, and when it comes to sort of just economic sustainability, that anybody can get laid off or furloughed or whatever the case is.
100%.
Yes.
And I always tell people, in our accelerator program that I have, that there are only two reasons why you are hired, like ever. You either make money for the company or you save them money. There's no
Yeah.
third reason. And if that stops, if the money stops, however important you think it is that you are for the company, you are replaceable or you are expendable. So definitely, I totally echo what you just said. So talking about making money, so I know that the transition can be difficult. I'm going through the same transition right now. I do have a couple of side hustles that give me something, but that steadiness of a job and the salary that it brings, if that goes away, it gets a little bit difficult. And I think it gets, and that's totally my point of view. You can totally say that that's not the case, but I think that if you are single, you just have zero income coming in, whereas for me, Simran is still earning and I still have something coming in. So how different and difficult it is, or how different it is, in that view from your point of view. And the second part of the question is, then how do you manage as a single person making this transition?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, of Joe. Very, very topical, I think, in today's day and time. So finances, of course, have a bearing on just every qualitative aspect of our
Mm,
life, right? And especially when you're alone, it does become extremely scary because everything has to be accounted for. You don't want to end up sort of sleeping on a park bench. And so the
yeah.
first thing is to always create a safety net. I think in today's day and age, there are so many people telling you to follow your passion and take the plunge and
Yeah.
don't stay another day in a job that doesn't give you satisfaction. And all of these very sort of sensationalistic, titles on YouTube videos, and all of it saying, take the plunge, life is too short. The fear of missing out, all of it. But I think it is also important to be very, very realistic financially. And I would actually encourage people to not take the deep dive, not make extremely dramatic and drastic
Mm,
changes until you build a safety net. That's been the important bit for me because financially I had to be solely responsible, for it all. So building a safety net and creating very, very tangible, time-sensitive goals about
Mm,
this is how much time I have to build and create this business, beyond which really I can choose to experiment. So it gives
mm,
you, a sense of how much time you have. But I think it's also very important to be realistic about that phase in between. I think Harvard calls it liminality, where you haven't completely let go of the past and your future hasn't
mm,
completely come to fruition. That
right.
in between stage where you're oscillating between holding on and letting go. I think it's very important to embrace that stage because it is an intrinsic part of building anything of value. And not holding yourself, or not being too harsh on yourself,
Mm,
and accounting for the number of weeks or months that you might be just oscillating from just doing a few things, or increasing your networks, or just tapping onto some of the dormant latent networks that you have to build value, because you are not going to be able to bring in a whole lot of revenue from month to one. I mean,
mm,
and so
absolutely.
a lot of times you might want to start researching on your side hustle or on your big business idea before you make the complete shift. While you still have that job, or while you're still doing your 9 to 5, you can still do as much research, or look at, is there a skills gap? Do I have to study or learn more? Or research your career pivot, as
Absolutely.
much you can learn about the new area that you're going to go into. So for me, because immigration is such a vast subject, it was also getting into pathways and streams that I wasn't very comfortable with.
Mm,
As you know, FSW draws have dried up. So for me,
right.
it was, what are the alternate ways of bringing people here? What are the provincial nomination programs that I can work with? Is business immigration more viable? Or can I do the startup visa, which in itself is
Mm,
a very, very convoluted process? So for
mm.
me, it was getting into areas that I wasn't initially very comfortable with, or not doubting my own ability to be able to navigate some of these new areas, particularly for me.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. And the thing that you talked about, the runway, having that, I always tell people who ask me, how were you able to, how was I able to make that transition? And I always tell people that, if I was making, say, $4,000 a month, and if my expenses are, say, 2,500, or my reduced expenses, after I know that my expenses are gonna, like, I'm gonna leave my job and this is my new normal, I'm not gonna shop or whatever that expense is, 2,500, I'll keep 6 months of runway in my bank account and I'll pay
Yeah,
myself from that, so that I don't, and that's a psychological thing, right? You're getting
yeah,
$2,500 every single month from some place which is yours, but that's a psychological thing that, and that lets you make, those
yeah.
decisions of learning versus pushing for business, and that, builds a very strong foundation for your business. And that's one thing that, I think you also would agree to, is something that
Oh
people
yeah,
should do
Navjot,
when they're making a
absolutely agree.
branch.
And sure. And I think the runway also, gives you some decision-making power. So you don't have to take on clients that, you think you won't be able to work with, or you
Yeah.
don't have to say yes when you really want to say no. It
Mm.
gives you that sort of decision-making capacity and the power to say no, because you don't have to do anything,
Yeah.
or you don't have to compromise on ethics, or you don't have to, compromise on the quality of work. You can
Mm.
choose clients that you want to work with, or other agencies that you want to associate with,
Absolutely.
in order to always keep your credibility intact. So it gives you that decision making power, which is extremely important in seasons like these.
No, absolutely. And Srijana, talking about side hustles, I know that you are doing your immigration thing, and that's, exciting. So, were there any other uh, parts of, you know, were there any other things that you actually contemplated, or did you want to supplement your income by something else? What are those things that people should think about when we are thinking of side hustles? But because not everyone would have either the skill set or the interest to be an immigration agent, or for, to be a mortgage
Yeah,
agent. So what would be your
yeah.
suggestion, and what was your thought process or your journey of how you settled on, let's not just say immigration, but how did you, you know make those comparisons of what to do and what not to do when you started out on your own?
Sure. So for me, sort of the career pivot and starting off on my own itself was sort of quite a watershed moment for me,
Hmm.
because now I had to focus on, okay, so what is the sort of incorporation process, or the process of building a business, or
Hmm.
creating sort of social media content, or writing blogs on immigration,
Right.
or becoming a contributing member on LinkedIn, and putting in content there that is relevant, topical, real time. That's sort of
Hmm.
immigration based. So that itself was a fairly sort of dramatic shift for me, and it required quite a few hours, honestly.
Mm,
So like how a lot of people suggest, you do an evaluation of what is it that you're good at, and is there a void in sort of the area that you're good at. So is there a service void, and can you do something that will fill that void and bring value
mm,
to people? So I've had to do a deep dive and figure out what is it that I was always intrinsically good at, or do I have a lot of latent skills? So for me it was after the last video, say, a lot of people are reaching out to me and saying, hey, we'd like more content from you, or you do
mm,
amazing on YouTube, or if you did a little bit more public speaking, or we'd like to learn from you how to speak like you do, or learn sort of the complexity of words and phrases and language and communication, all of it. So I wasn't necessarily comfortable doing YouTube or even wanted to. But it
okay.
was, why not? If I'm intrinsically good at something, why not sort of, create videos and share my story? And because also the fact that I was already operating in the realm of immigration, there's so much to share
Right.
because of constant changes. And there's such a wide market for it, because people are wanting to know about, how to come here, or a lot of people wanting to emulate sort of my journey and the way I navigated my pathway to Canada. So for me, it was, okay, this is what I'm good at. I also looked at,
Mm,
can I also just make use of some additional skills. I was always good at writing, and a
mhm,
lot of people had told me, oh, you do really well if you wrote something. And I'm also quite a reader, so I thought, okay, so there is an area of overlap here. Then I could possibly
mm,
look at writing. It always felt very cumbersome and very onerous for me to
right.
write a manuscript and stuff like that. But even sort of thinking in that direction, for me, the pandemic has been about, alongside building a business, what are the other areas that I can look at in terms of just the skills that I have, and identifying an area where there is a general void in the services industry, and providing that added value.
That's amazing. And there's a massive lesson in that, that sometimes we just focus too much on getting over our weaknesses, that we just miss out on our strengths, right?
Yeah,
Uh, when we need to double down on our strengths and we are build a business around that, or build a side hustle, or build something that you love, that's not
yeah,
work anymore then, right? And
yes,
we stop ourselves from doubling down on our strengths because we are trying to mend some of our weaknesses, and that's where I think we miss the trick. I'm not saying you should not get better at what you're not good at, but what I'm saying is you also have to have an eye for your strengths. And that's what I call Fig Jam in our sessions.
yep,
Fig Jam, and a lot of people know who are watching what Fig Jam is, but that's where I think knowing your biggest strength
yeah,
that you can build your business around or your life around is
yeah.
really important.
No,
So
no, Joe, thank
Srijana,
you. Your videos have been, I'm, just going to take a minute to say they've been really inspirational. I know about the whole Fig Jam philosophy, having heard it from you, because a lot of people think, oh, like, look at her and she sounds confident and, in what and she sounds like she knows a whole lot. But, just being honest, I mean, there are so many cycles of self-doubt and, the
hmm,
self-flagellation, right? That I'm not good enough. Or for me, as someone starting a new business, even just reaching out to stalwarts in the industry was like, why are they even going to respond to me? Or
yeah.
like, how am I even going to write to them and say, hey, I'm new in the business, can we connect, or could we possibly work together? You just feel so little as someone who
Hmm.
just has sort of this new company that no one really knows about, reaching out to people in the industry who have established businesses or who are doing really well. Because the moment you make that brave transition and you're out, so many people seem to applaud you for the effort and the value that they derive from it. And that's
100%.
been my lesson as well. Yeah.
100%. And I would ask everyone who loves us as Potato Talkies to write in the comments and cheer Srijana on for making more videos on her YouTube channel. And the link will be in the description. And Srijana, we would love to look at more videos and explore your story and you post more videos, because in today's day and age, we do feel that some things are very obvious, but probably they are not. They're just a byproduct of how we have been come along, how we come along
Yeah.
in this entire journey, and we just learn stuff that other people, for example,
Mm.
I could not imagine taking this step of moving into a side hustle and making it a full-time one if Simran was not there. It would be
Yeah.
very difficult for me to do that.
Yeah.
But you did take that step. So what were your biggest, like, this is the last question that I have, so
Sure.
what were your biggest, I would say, top 2 or 3 learnings or top 2 or 3 things that you would want other people to do, maybe some mistakes that you did along the way. What were your top 2 or 3 headlines about this transition?
The first one, and Navjot, would be to sort of, to get out of your comfort zone. I think as cliche as it sounds, for me, I was also a product of, my life so far, and a product of my upbringing. So I come from a
Hmm.
really small town in India. I mean, Darjeeling, it's a small city, the back of beyond. Growing up, the world wasn't a level playing field for me because I barely had information. There wasn't anybody like me on screen. So for me, I
Hmm.
didn't necessarily have to move to Canada. I didn't have to start afresh in my career. I had a lot for me going already even before I came here. But to me, it was okay, what can I do that's different, that's going to bring in more growth and knowledge, and just sort of my self actualization as a human being too. So to a lot of people watching from small cities and villages and towns in India, particularly, it is you can create your own path, that you don't necessarily it's not change is intergenerational.
Hmm.
My parents are still in Darjeeling. They rarely go or travel outside of the town. They love it there, and
Hmm.
a lot of what I do, it just doesn't make sense to them. Or there are a lot of people back home who don't necessarily understand or identify with some of the ambitions that I have, and where I want my life to go and be, and what I want
Hmm.
it to be. So the first lesson is just think outside of the box and create your own path. There will be naysayers. There will be people who say, "Oh, it's too audacious what you're trying to do here." Or
Right.
like Canada and moving alone, or you'll be back in India after a year. It's too hard. The second one is, I think allow for failures, because it is
Hmm.
sometimes we feel like, oh my God, like I'm here in Canada, and now if I go back, like what's the entire town, village, country, what are they going to think of me? Or, I bring in so much, we associate failure with so much shame, right?
Yeah.
And everything that sort of comes with it. But I think that this is your own journey, and
Hmm.
that it doesn't matter. Like if you fall, you just have to pick yourself up and continue. And that, even for me with the business, it was the same. Like it doesn't matter, even if it doesn't become a sort of a stellar business, I'll find other ways of earning money. The third one is to be sensible about this whole, follow your passions. It
Hmm.
can be extremely sort of lucrative for youngsters to be like, oh, I'm not interested in a 9 to 5, or you know what, it's not as exciting, or you see all of these Instagram posts on like, taking the road less traveled, or this sort of nomadic lifestyle. But you have to be realistic about, do you have a safety net?
Hmm.
Or while you are doing your 9 to 5, can you pivot very, very slowly? Can you just dip your feet in the shallow end of the water, and then wade your way through the deeper parts a little bit later as you,
Hmm.
are navigating your own journey? So be wise and realistic about how long it can take you to get to your, your dream side hustle, or your job, or this location independent job nowadays that
Hmm.
everybody wants, right? Everybody wants to be swinging in Bali and running their business.
I think it's okay, and I totally echo that. It's okay to do both your side hustle and your job for a moment of time when you are fairly confident that yes, now you can make it, or now you are interested, and now you can make that plunge, and it's completely fine to do that together, and not
Yep.
think that you cannot run your business because you have a job. That's
Yep.
not how it works. You just
Yep.
work more. You work 18 hours a day,
Yep.
and you make it both work, and then you leave one. And I totally agree with that. So thank you so much, Srijana. This was a real pleasure. I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching and who are wanting to make that plunge, and who just, sometimes feel that, some people actually say it because they have something, they have a stash of cash,
Yep.
like lying around, and they have a safety net. It's not the case. So a lot of people who make it big, and we are still trying, right? Both you and
Yep.
me are still
Yep.
trying. And a lot of people that make it big, they actually start small,
Yep.
and they take baby steps, and then they make their way up. So thank you so much, Srijana.
No worries, no worries. And the fact that you and I still don't have it all figured out. I mean, I certainly don't.
Absolutely.
And that I'm going to reinvent myself and learn as I go. And I'm told before I end, especially too, I think, a lot of sort of young women sort of watching out there, or young girls wanting to move to another country, or, try for that, next role that they've been eyeing for a while. I don't know if I, quite have, the pedestal yet to say anything lofty, but I like to say that that you have to go for it, and sometimes there is victory in just showing up. No matter, it doesn't matter. You may not be ready for the next job, or, you might not be positioned ideally to make that shift. But sometimes there is virtue in just showing up with all of your, with faults and insecurities. And sometimes you just, you have to fake it till you make it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Srijana. That's a beautiful message to end this all up. And we'll probably have you again, depending on, a lot of people have different questions, and I'm sure a lot of people have immigration related questions as well. So we'll see, if you want to do something in future, but definitely thank you so much, Srijana, for coming on the channel. And you have a good one, and I wish you all the best in, the business that you're building now.
Thank you, Navjot. We'll be happy to collaborate in the future, and lots of love to you and Simran. You guys have been a huge source of inspiration. So thank you for all of the value that you bring and for your content that's always so uplifting and inspiring, even in times that are not, particularly positive. Thank you for what you do.